I had 2 extraterrestrial contact experiences where I met up with 5 Arcturian beings. I was having massive downloads about galactic history, star races, astronomy. Earth was created to be a living library of different genetics through many different star systems. A lot of people have this misconception that Pleiadians are all good. Not necessarily. My understanding with the Lyrans is these are very open-hearted, childlike people.
Which is how they got hoodwinked.
Yeah, they got hoodwinked.
We have to understand that we have the genetics of all of these species in us.
Including reptilian.
Including reptilian. This is going to be a fun ride for everyone. We're going to be talking with Debbie Solaris about the starseed origins of humanity and which extraterrestrial races most represent, work with, and even interfere with life here on Earth. Debbie has had some of her own experiences and does intuitive sessions with others who have questions about their origins as well. And this conversation is going to go into some of that. Welcome.
Thank you.
And also, what I love, which your work has really compiled beautifully, is the history of the galactic origins of the species that we carelessly bandy about, you know, in today's world of information, disinformation, and misinformation. So I thought it would be good to have a nice, sane conversation with you about all these species that populate our galaxy.
Oh yeah, it's going to be really super interesting to talk about all of them.
I think it's going to be. First of all, how did you originally become fascinated with star origins? Because that's not where everybody naturally gravitates in their life.
Well, it's actually through my own experiences. I had 2 extraterrestrial contact experiences in 2012. And I noticed after I had those experiences, so they were out-of-body experiences, I was having massive downloads about galactic history, star races, astronomy, all information that I've never ever even known about before.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Were you already studying and curious about these things, or this just kind of came about?
It just kind of came about. When I had the experience, it was during dream time, but it wasn't a dream. It was definitely an out-of-body experience because everything seemed like it was in hyper-reality. And I did notice that I was on board some sort of a craft, and it was the energies were very intense. You know, the colors were intense, the details were intense.
Was part of you afraid or fighting it at all, or
Not
did
at
it
all.
seem okay?
Not at all.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it was. I never felt any fear. I just felt maybe a little bit of curiosity, and maybe some bewilderment, like, you know, where am I at? Why am I here? What's this? You know. And the ship was sentient, so it was kind of like a living being of its own. It was directing me towards some sort of a space where I met up with 5 Arcturian beings.
Well, Arcturians, to a lot of people, come as guides to humanity.
Yeah.
And it's not an uncommon position for them to have. Now, I'll just toss out, some people see them as kind of very tall and oftentimes blue in color, for example. Mm-hmm. What was your experience of the Arcturians, and what did they show you?
Well, it was interesting when I approached the room. I was already formulating questions in my head, and they were answering my questions even before I could finish the question in my head.
Right.
Which was pretty, so they were, you know, definitely tuning into me telepathically. And I was really surprised at how they were able to pick up on my telepathic thoughts. Mm-hmm. And as far as how they looked, it was really hard to look at them directly, mm-hmm. because their frequency is so high. And I got the impression that they were actually pulling down their frequency in order even to have an interaction with me. Mm-hmm. And they looked, their auras were big. It was like, mm-hmm. that was the first thing I noticed was the auras. There was colors in the auras I had never seen in, you know, mm-hmm. our spectrum here. So when you're in the higher realms, you see there's a multitude of even additional colors. You know, as many beautiful colors as we have here on Earth, there's a multitude of those colors. The other thing that I noticed was when I was glancing at them, you know, it's kind of like in the periphery or sideways, they had larger heads, somewhat larger eyes. The eyes had pupils and irises. They weren't super tall. I know some people talking about, you know, Arcturians are tall. These ones weren't tall. I don't know, maybe they were pulling down their frequency to look less intimidating. But they just seemed like the energy that emanated from them was just love and acceptance. And I felt very comfortable with them.
Well, okay, so what begs a question right now is, why you? Why did this happen to you?
Oh, that was one of the first questions I asked.
Right.
Yeah, I was just like, why is it me? And they told me that I was part of their family, that have chosen to be on Earth to do a great mission, but I had forgotten. And a part of the reason was because I had sent out a prayer 2 weeks before, you know, asking for assistance for the planet, you know, planet Earth.
Now, we can start where you want. We can start with Lyra.
Yeah.
I want to start with where the humanoid story came in, the reptilian story came in, and just let you tell that story of what happened. And you had a lifetime within there. And tell your own, interject your own experience of what you saw when you feel the time is appropriate, and what happened to these races, where they colonized and so forth after. So just tell us the story now.
Okay. This is something that I share oftentimes in my Akashic readings, because many of us have had connections with Lyra and Vega. Lyra is where it's called the home of human consciousness for a reason. The reason for that is because, at least in our particular galaxy and in this universe, it was where the experimentation into physicality began. So initially, before that, we were all these etheric beings. We were soul shards of Source. We were splitting into oversoul groups. I always refer to Galactic Center. Galactic Center is kind of where everything began, where there was this integration of masculine and feminine energies. That's actually the Source template, is the feminine and the masculine. So everything that we see, even in Atlantis and in, you know, future civilizations, are based on that template. Lyra also followed the same template. Lyra was created to be a starting off point for sentient beings to be able to experience physicality, and to be able to experience this separation, you know, the separation from Source. Lyra was a very beautiful, very paradise-like, you know, civilization. It existed for thousands of years in peace and unity. However, even in Lyra, there was two separate human races, or humanoid races, that were created. So there was the white or Caucasian Lyrans that were very tall beings. They looked a little bit more Nordic, maybe. Those beings were more Father God consciousness oriented. So they had more of a push forward energy, more physical energy. The blue Vega beings were more of a Mother Goddess consciousness orientation. So those beings, even though they were highly technical, had more interest in reflection and spirituality. And so kind of what happened with the whole Lyra story is kind of a lesson for a lot of us, I think. A lot of us, I think, it's easy to fall into complacency and naivety when everything is going well. You know, when everything is going well, it's easy just to kind of take it for granted and to not be consciously aware of what's happening around us. That is what happened. That's the Lyran story, okay? The Lyrans, and even to a certain extent the Vega beings, felt that, I think they just kind of got complacent. And so when the Draconians that were in the constellation next door So the Draconians were of a different consciousness. You know, these were beings that were originally kicked out of their own universe, out of a different universe, and they ended up, I think, somehow got deposited in Draco. Okay, they were not very happy about that. Obviously, they felt that they were an ancient race of beings. They wanted to conquer, the galaxy, at least, if not the universe. These beings saw Lyra, and they pretty much saw a sitting duck. You know, they saw the Lyran system, and they thought, wow, they got a lot of resources on their planet. We could use some of those resources. We're going to conquer that system.
Let's go to the Pleiades
Yeah.
and talk about their influence, because you say they've been here about 225,000 years?
Oh, yeah, yeah. The Pleiadians have went through their own similar evolution that we've in their history that we've gone through here on, that we're now currently going through here on Earth. So their evolution started 1 million years ago. So 1 million years ago, they were struggling with a lot of the same issues that we have here on Earth. Maybe not quite to the extreme that we see here on Earth, but
as a result of colonization or a split within their own people, or what did
both?
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
both. Yeah, yeah. It was. I think it was. They were expanding in their own. So the Pleiades is a star cluster, and there's quite a few different stars, and each of these stars have their own civilization, their own culture. So under the umbrella of the Pleiadian, unification, but there was also a split in the Pleiades where I think the Pleiadians, because they were trying to heal from the wounds of their ancestors, most of their ancestors were Lyran refugees,
Right.
and so they dealt with trauma signatures within their own genetics, and so they became ultra focused on the light and didn't know how to integrate the darkness within them, which created the split of your positive Pleiadians and your more rogue Pleiadians. So a lot of people have this misconception that Pleiadians are all good. Not necessarily. They may look beautiful, but they're not all good. There's some rogue ones, and some of the rogue Pleiadians ended up joining forces with Orion. That's a whole other story, but there was, so there was this split, and then they had to find their way back towards integration, which is kind of what we're seeing here on Earth right now, where, factions are very split right now, especially here in our country, but we're also trying to find our way back to integration.
Do you think that there is a reptilian influence at the base of the chasm and split in our world?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. Yeah.
And what do you think do you think it's an end game for them because really their time's coming to a close, or this is just a continuation of what they always do, and toward what end?
I think it's an end game. I think they're pulling out all the stops at this point.
That's what I feel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't see their reign lasting for much longer. Mm-hmm. I think within the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot of mass changes politically, economically, socially, economically on all spectrums here on Earth. And some of it's going to be really hard. It's going to be hard for people, especially those that aren't already awakened, which, obviously doesn't include, most of your viewers here on Gaia.
Right. And this is true because one thing we're all part of is the systems that have been created and that we've helped either create or allowed to happen. Yeah. I want to talk about the work you do and why it matters to us to know about our galactic history as human beings and individuals, who ends up on your doorstep, and maybe a couple stories of what you've dealt with, what people are dealing with, and take us through that.
Okay, that would be an interesting segue. Yeah. The reason why, this is just through, thousands of Akashic readings I've done throughout the last few years, but I'm finding that even though, we're all ancient souls, we've all had experiences in multiple star systems, multiple dimensions, we still kind of carry the same themes, the same lessons, the same, challenges, throughout each of our incarnations. So as far as galactic history is concerned, I mentioned a little bit about, kind of what the Lyran pitfalls are, because we were talking about that quite a bit. I see the same thing with other star systems where, because of their evolution, they develop certain personality traits, or certain skill sets, or certain mindsets. And it's really interesting sometimes for me to see, oh yes, this person.
I know where you're from.
Yeah, I can tell where you're from just by your personality.
Thank you for the hard work you do, and it just, of course, to me it's fun and fascinating. Anything that gives us more knowledge of who we are as a species and where we might be going, to me is.
And how it has an impact on us personally, too.
And how, yes, absolutely, personally as well. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you for having me here. It's been a real pleasure. I really appreciate your interest in my work.
Yes, thank you. Fascinating topic. You can look further into Debbie's work at her very artistically illustrated website, debbiesolaris.com. You might also enjoy my interviews with Barbara Hanclough, also on reptilians and other dimensional beings here in the Gaia archives. Until next time, thank you for joining us here on Open Minds.